we're going to do a way too early version of a mock draft here. We'll just do the lottery teams, and so 1 through 15. And the way we're going to format it is, if we were the GM picking for that team, who would we pick at that position based on who's available here? So, Craig, do you want number 1 or number 2?
I mean, I can go number 1. I kind of just went off on Lafreniere, what the Rangers should do anyways. I mean, everyone knows that it's going to be Lafreniere. I know, like, I guess some scouts have come out and said, anonymous scouts have said that maybe Byfield or Stützle could end up being the better player. But, I mean, with the style of game Lafreniere plays, like, he's going to instantly impact the Rangers. You can easily slide him in the second line with Cap. That's why they need that center. Yeah. Him and Capco with Barkov as the second line would just be stupid. Anyways, it's Lafreniere.
Well, you know what? I've got nothing to disagree with you there. I think he's the consensus number 1. We're moving on here. So Lafreniere's off the board. So as Los Angeles, I'm going to go ahead and take Stützle. He's got speed for days. Initial reports are already sort of saying that they're starting to sort of lean more towards him than Byfield anyways. So, things are starting to leak out that he probably is going number 2. But, he's already got pro experience. No one reports on his size, but I think he's 6'2". Like, he's not a small guy.
Has he grown? He was, I think he was like 5'11" to start, but I mean, it happens, right? They just grow their draft year.
Yeah, well, and who knows, right? These scouting
5'11",
reports there, I'm sure they had Martin St. Louis as 6'1" or something coming into his draft year. But
his legs, maybe.
Yeah. But, so we're going to go ahead and take Stützle at number 2 here. So, Ottawa, you're on the clock. Who are you taking?
Well, this is probably the easiest pick other than Lafreniere. I mean, there's 3 players. You pick the one that's left. You go Byfield. Yeah. And I know there's everyone looks at the World Juniors just because that's what everyone watched. And he wasn't impactful as Lafreniere, but you have to remember, he's almost a full year younger than Lafreniere. So, I mean, the guy's just got all the upside in the world. And he moves his straight line speed for a player his size. And it's not one of those where, like, Jason Spezza to get to top speed would do a loop kind of thing to get going and pick up the puck and into the zone. I mean, this guy he can accelerate too. So, be interesting to see his growth this year, but I mean, they've got a potential number 1 perennial all-star here. So at center.
Well, there hasn't been too much drama so far because I've got the exact same pick as well too, right? It's kind of a coin toss. Ottawa's going to end up with whoever LA doesn't pick, essentially. But like you said, he's going to be a strong power forward there. He's a 6'4", 215. He's already got an NHL body. He's ready to roll there. My sort of comparables for him is ceiling. He's sort of a Ryan Getzlaf-esque player there, where floor he's Logan Brown 2.0 for the Sens. And now they've got 2 huge centers that they don't really know what to do with. But
I don't really see his floor that low just because of the speed alone.
Yeah.
And I mean, we'll see what happens with Brown. He's still young, but you can't pass up on Byfield.
So I think that's pretty much how everyone thought 1, 2, and 3 were going to go there. Now it's where it starts getting a little bit interesting here. So I'm Detroit. I'm on the board here, right? I mean, you look at poor Detroit. Like what a nightmare scenario for them. If ever there was a team that needed to win the Lafreniere sweepstakes, it was them, and they of course fall to 4. So, I mean, they don't really have a strong point. They need forwards. They need defensemen. They need goaltending because they've got Jimmy Howard and, Jonathan Bernier in net. So you can really pick anything, and they're probably breaking camp with the team next year. So I'm going to go ahead and take Marco Rossi from the Ottawa 67s. 120 points in 56 games. He's coming from a really strong program in Ottawa where they had a huge run last year. This year, if they weren't the favorites to win the OHL, then, they were probably, 1B. They probably would have made it to the finals at least there. And, he's a piece that would at least resemble something that they can piece together a first line out in Detroit right now. Because right now, outside of Dylan Larkin and maybe Zadina, if he happens to take a step forward, they don't have a whole lot going for him. So this could be a guy who's actually in the mix for even, the Calder next year, just because there's not a whole lot of people blocking his play.
He'll get ice time. Yeah, he'll get ice time. And he's a guy that's, I mean, exactly opposite with what we were saying about Byfield, where, I mean, he's done everything he can in junior. His size is nowhere near the same as Byfield, but he's done everything he can in junior.
Yeah.
He's ready to go on, and like he's super strong for his size. So, I mean, he's always used to playing small, anyways. There's still some monsters in CHL.
Yeah.
Obviously not grown man strength, but still, like I mean, it's all about his edges down low, and he's smart, super smart with the puck. So I mean,
yeah, it's a speed game now, right? It's not like the mid '90s where you've got the Lindrosses and Prongers and Scott Stevens going into the corners with you there. It's if they can't catch you, you're gonna have a long career, right?
That is terrifying to think of, though. If you can't hold people up like you used to be able to anymore, and you have Lindros going full speed into the corner, trapezoid goalie can't stop the puck, like.
Yeah. Oh yeah, some of these players they were a generation too early.
Yeah.
So go figure. You're the Sens fan, and now you're picking twice for Ottawa. You're back on the clock with Ottawa at 5.
So this one's a bit tougher, and best player available might be Lucas Raymond, and I feel like that's what you should do, but I don't know if they can pass up on Jamie Drysdale at defense. I really don't. And the more I watch the guy, like, I know people have said Jake Sanderson's just as good of a skater, but I don't see it. Maybe top end speed, but the agility, the way Drysdale uses his edges and can move around with the puck is just ridiculous. And I think he'll have no problem sliding in an eventual first pairing for the Sens.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
The only like, it is tough between him and Raymond. It really is. But I think long term, the Sens would benefit more of having just stacked defense.
Yeah.
And in this draft, we have lots of picks. You're gonna be able to grab more skilled forwards later on than you are a skilled defenseman.
Yeah, and that's just it, right? You know, puck moving defensemen, they don't grow on trees, and you know, like I had the same thing on my mock draft. I had Drysdale if he's still available at 5, and who knows, maybe Detroit goes and reaches out and grabs him, and
I mean, they could. It'd be a smart pick by them too. Like, it's
but I had the same thing, right? Like if you add him to a young decor with Shabbat and Brandstrom back on the D end there, you've got something that you can actually work with for the next 5 to 10 years and really start building around from back.
And I don't think it gets talked enough that he was a defenseman playing for Team Canada in the World Juniors on a gold medal team before he was drafted. We see that with forwards, sure, when they get plugged in the fourth or third line, unless they're first overall pick like Tavares was when he was in there, and like Lafreniere now. But like, I can't remember a defenseman that played that well for any international team, let alone Team Canada in the World Juniors before their draft year. So
yeah. Well, you know what? Yeah, we're staying boring here. So 1 through 5, I've got the same things here, which brings us to 6. So Anaheim's on the board again. Anaheim, they've got some decisions to make as far as what direction they're going to be going. You know, they're sort of core pieces from the past are not getting any younger, and do you start moving some of them? They already moved on from Corey Perry last year, and is Getzlaf going to retire a Duck? Is he going to get shipped out at the trade deadline coming up for this upcoming season? Who knows? So I'm going to go ahead and take Lucas Raymond from Frölunda, and he's got 2 years of pro experience at age 18 already, so he's used to playing against bigger bodies. And I think he could probably make the jump to the NHL fairly seamlessly as well, too. If you're looking at possible landing spots for him, it's probably not a better spot for him than Anaheim, which is pretty Swedish heavy already with 5 active, Swedish players on their roster. And that's always one thing that scouts will say when a player comes over from a European country. That first year is usually the hardest for him because of the language barrier and the transition and, finding housing and da-da-da-da. So having that many fellow countrymen there around him, he could be getting himself into a really, really good spot. He's got great vision, makes his line mates better. I think that's a pretty safe pick for a team that was frankly struggling to score a lot of goals last year.
Who do you see him playing with if he does make the jump? Do you start top 6 lines, or you just send him in the third line and just let him feel it out a bit?
Well, I think he'll probably end up breaking camp with the team, and then they'll take that sort of, whatever is 9-game look at him before they have to sort of make that decision, and move him to a couple different places. Start him off playing with Raquel and getting some actual power play minutes. See what he can do sort of offensively. If that's not clicking, maybe move him down to sort of a third line role and see if he can sort of generate some offense on a checking line initially, but I see him long term as having top 6 potential. How quickly he gets there, that's sort of the debate, right?
Yeah, no, he's definitely got the potential.
All right, New Jersey, you're on the clock. Who are you taking at 7?
Blackwood got hung out to dry this year. Mm-hmm. Just felt bad for him. Any games they won, it was going to be because he just stole them, it seemed like. So I'm going to pick another defenseman here. I'm going to go with Jake Sanderson. Yeah. Might be too early for some people, but I mean, the guy's just kind of just keeps on rocketing up the rankings there. And again, he's a good skater, and he's solid. I don't know if he's going to blow you away with offensive skill, but I mean, he's definitely going to be overly competent in the defensive zone. Like, I think he's just going to be one of those guys that is just good at everything and can chip in offensively. He can probably handle a one-man breakout with his speed too if there's no pass available. And I mean, just the sooner they can get defensive help for Blackwood, who's still a fairly young goalie, if they can get that team playing better defensively before he mentally breaks from all the shots, the better. So yeah, you go Sanderson.
Yeah, and yeah, for those that are listening, we did not consult beforehand, but I also had Sanderson here at number 7 as well too. So I was hoping for some sort of arguments or something going on, but so far we've been on the same page. Like you said,
I mean, we can go back to Detroit if you want. I mean, I can see them taking Perfetti. I mean,
yeah, you never know. But
either way, either center's good there. So.
Yeah, well, like you said, right? New Jersey definitely needs help on the back end. They gave up the 3rd most goals this year, and it certainly wasn't because of poor goaltending, like you said, right? Blackwood had a very, very good year, especially for such a young goaltender there. But when you're playing with a leaky defense core, and your star player that you're sort of were thinking you were going to be building around in Subban there is. That could be a contract that they might be looking to move sooner rather than later, unless he sort of turns
like
his seasons around. But and like you said, everyone sort of agrees that Drysdale's the real deal. But depending what scout you talk to, some people have him right behind Drysdale. Some people have, Sanderson out of the top 10 completely. So it really depends how high you are on him. But like you say, I think he's got some good offensive upside. Whether it's going to come right away, who knows? But I think it will come. And he's probably plug and play. And if he doesn't break camp with them next year, then, he might be getting sort of called up and down type thing. And definitely making them think about service time as far as how they're going to treat him next year for sure. So Buffalo, I'm on the board here, and you know what? As much as I would love to say you go and you take a good solid defenseman here and sort of shore up that end, I think your biggest concern is you got to keep Eichel happy at this point. It just seems like every year that they don't make the playoffs, he's ready to explode, right? And so the last thing you want is your franchise player that you're building around to start demanding to trade or whatever. So I think this pick is definitely a keep Eichel happy pick. You go and you take Perfetti from Saginaw, and you go, he has back-to-back 37 goal seasons, 111 points in 61 games last year. They've got a fairly young D-core already, so am I 100% sold on them? No. Do I kind of want to see what they can do? Yeah, right? So it's not as pressing a need as someone who you're going to try and keep, giving some top 6 probably minutes at least from the start, right? And then,
I mean,
hopefully that sort of builds on them, because they were 22nd in the league in scoring last year, and they've got some offensive pieces that just weren't clicking for whatever reason with Eichel. Cousin Jeff there was
holy.
Yeah,
that was just what a backfire.
Yeah.
So do you see, I mean, Perfetti's listed as a center. You can see him playing wing a bit as well, right? Or do you see Eichel potentially going wing?
You know, like I kind of always defer to, you know, the young bucks are going to be getting moved around probably more than the established veterans. So I think they might move him around a little bit. I'm not super familiar with what his face-off percentages are or anything like that. I didn't do that deep a dive onto him.
It's always a drop-off when you go to the NHL to begin because everyone's
Exactly,
struggling,
right? So if he's only, say, 55% in CHL play, right, is that what's that going to translate to at the next level? So that in and of itself in training camp might sort of make that decision a little bit easier for him and go, okay, well, he's getting eaten alive at the dot, so let's move him to a wing here. But
and
offensively, the talent's there.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And I'm trying to remember, I feel like he probably should have looked at this before. I feel like he might have played a little bit of wing on the under 18s this past year for Team Canada as well. So I don't think he'd be completely foreign to it. No. And the one thing is, I mean, he's smart. He could be the smartest hockey sense player in the draft. So I think he'd be able to adapt pretty quickly.
Yeah. All right. Let's see if we finally differ at pick 9 here. So Minnesota's on the clock. Who are you taking, Craig?
Well, I think they need more scoring. They're always going to be a stifling defensive team. I feel like they've just had issues just getting some star power scoring. Fiala-Canna came out of nowhere, but he can't do everything. I'm going to go with a fast riser from Ottawa here. I'm going to go Jack Quinn.
Look at that. That's who I had at 9 too. So I might as well have just done this podcast myself today, apparently. But what's your rationale for Jack Quinn at 9?
So it was between him and Holtz. I mean, I know Holtz played in the men's league, but I mean, maybe it's just that I'm not familiar enough with Holtz, but it just seems like Jack Quinn can score with more than just his shot. Mm-hmm. Like when you score, what was it, like 53 goals this year in a shortened year?
Yeah.
You're going to the dirty areas too. And like the whole talk about how his numbers were inflated because of Rossi, well, they didn't play on the same line.
Yeah.
Like that was his own line. So
yeah. And
maybe he wasn't getting the top defensive pairing against them, but I mean, the shot is there.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're Minnesota, I mean, you're kind of in a weird spot, right? Like you're not bad enough to tank and take a run at number 1. You're not good enough to take sort of a serious run at the cup as is right now.
Yeah.
You know, your sort of core players is starting to get older there. You know, your Koivus, your Stalls, your Parises, like they're all getting closer to 40 than they are 30 for sure. And, you know, being able to add a 50 goal scorer to that lineup, even if it is at the junior level, right?
50 goals is 50
not
goals.
Something that you can, sneeze at, right? So,
no.
Yeah, I agree. They got to sort of look for offense there, and if Jack Quinn's still there, I kind of like him more than some of the other options as well too.
It's just, I mean, yeah, the guy has it. Yeah. I think so.
So I'm Winnipeg now. This might be one that's a little bit sort of off the board here a little bit, but you know, I'm taking a long hard look at Gould from Prince Albert Raiders, the defenseman. Ooh. You know, I think from a lot of the scouting reports you're seeing, he's probably the number 3 ranked defenseman out there. You know, some people might have him 4, but he's sort of a consensus solid all-around defenseman. You know, he's steadily progressed season after season in the WHL. He's a phenomenal skater. He's 6'2", so he's got sort of that already NHL ready body, but in all the reports that you see about him, they keep saying, you know, it's, you know, controlled rage, mean streak, however the heck you want to sort of phrase it there. And yeah. I think that really matches up well to the Western Conference style and the opponents that they'll be playing. If anything, they probably could have used someone like him in their play-in round series when, you know, they had all the injuries. Right? Oh, that's just it, right? Adding a solid defenseman who's got a little bit of sandpaper to him probably isn't the worst thing that you could do at number 10. And, you know, looking at sort of their directions they could go, offensively, the Jets really aren't that bad offensively. Defensively, they're not terrible either, but I sort of see them weaker on defense than they are on offense. And if you can keep even less pucks coming at the net at a potential Vezina winner in the future in Hellbuck there, like that you could go on a really deep run.
Yeah, I see the logic there. I am going to disagree with you, though. I mean, they do have a lot of good offensive pieces, but that's just, recency bias. When Scheifele went down, they didn't really have any other centers that could drive play and set up their high-skilled wingers. And I think if you have someone like Anton Lundell still available, who is a playmaker, who is poised with the puck, I think down the road that could just help relieve some stress from Scheifele, because he could get injured again. It's hockey, it's physical, it's going to happen. But I do like what you're saying though with your pick there. They could have used Bufflin.
Yeah.
Right? That's the exact kind of player you're describing. He doesn't have the same size, but a mean physical player that can protect the front of the net, because Hellebuck's great, but do you really want to keep on having him save you every game? So
yeah.
I get that.
Yeah. All right. Nashville, number 11 on the clock. Who are you taking?
Nashville at number 11. You know what? I might just stay with that pick that I just said. I think Anton Lundell.
Yeah.
Same kind of thing. Their centers have disappointed. Right? They've got they need forward help, period. There is some help coming. You got Tolvanen coming down the road soon here. But, every signing or trade they've made has not worked out to this point. Duchesne's been disappointing for them. Turris hasn't been the same since he's left Ottawa. Ryan Johansson, you think they would probably prefer Seth Jones right now instead of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think you start rebuilding that center depth, because trading isn't working for you.
Yeah. Well, so we're finally starting to differ a little bit here, and I can see the logic in that pick. I had them taking Holtz at this pick here. Goal-scoring Swedish winger, kind of exactly what they need. You and I both kind of agree. Defensively, they're pretty set right now. In net, I probably see Saros sort of leapfrogging Rene this year, and Rene sort of, him more playing 30 games and Saros probably playing 50 the upcoming season. But either way, no matter how you split it, sort of their back end is set. Like you say, it's goal scoring at this point. But the one thing that, led me to Holtz instead of another center is, even though they're not producing, they do still have quite a few bona fide NHL centers on that team. Right? You've got your Turrises, your Duchesnes, and depending on what he's playing that night, sometimes he's on the wing, sometimes he's center, in Johansson, right? But it seems like no one else on their lines is able to either finish or whatever. So for that reason, that's why I sort of went winger here. That's why I went Alexander Holtz from good old Sweden. And again, lots of Swedes on that team as well too, so they could even help him, with that transition in whether it's year one or year two. It sort of makes it a little bit easier for him.
Oh, that's true.
So this is my favorite pick on the board right here. It's 12, so we've got Florida on the clock. So here's who I'm taking and the rationale behind it. So I'm taking Askarov here. Right? So here's why, right? Number one, top goaltending prospect. It's unanimous. There's not really any debate. Tons of international experience.
Right.
Depending on which scout you're sort of getting your reports from there. A lot of people haven't been hyping up a goalie like this since, Marc-Andre Fleury, Carey Price.
Yes.
So all that to say is, he's got Bobrovsky already in front of him there. You've got two sort of Russian goaltenders that can sort of mentor one another there. And again, going back to the Talon thing, they're in transition right now. They didn't look great in the play-in games. They've got some nice pieces, but the reports are coming out that they're likely blowing it up, right?
Yeah.
Dadonov and Hoffman are probably, they're not even going to, whether it's trade them, they might try and trade them before the draft, but if not, they're just letting them walk, right? So they're actually in cost-saving mode. So if ever there's a team that can afford to be patient, because let's face it, goalies take the longest of any position to really develop into NHL, caliber talent, it's them, right? Because you've got Bobrovsky, who's still on contract for how many years, right? Like an absurd amount. He just signed the friggin' deal. And, they can afford to be a little bit patient with him. And maybe this sort of sell-off leads to them tanking, getting another high draft pick. And then, 2 or 3 years down the line, when Askarov is actually assuming the number one sort of position on that team, they're now set on that in net there, and they've got a few high draft picks coming in to help them on offense as well too.
Yeah, no, I like to pick. I mean, whoever gets Askarov, I mean, you just at this point you just draft him because he's that good, and regardless of need. But like it's good logic because they're gonna. Sounds like they're gonna blow it up.
Yeah.
So
trouble in South Beach.
Apparently.
All right, so number 13, we've got Carolina via Toronto, and as a Sens fan, I'm sure you sort of love the irony of the last 24 hours for them, right? They lose Game 5 in heartbreaking fashion. They lose the Lafreniere, which if you actually saw the slow mo, it was actually the Leafs ball that was going up, and it did a double doink, and then the Minnesota Wild ball hit it out, and then the Rangers ball went up, so they were that close to actually winning Lafreniere. They don't get him. As a result, Carolina gets their first pick, right? So just the perfect storm for him here. But, who are you taking at Carolina at number 13?
So I really like Carolina's team in general. I might have gone Askarov if he was available there just because same kind of thing. Like that just seems to be their bona fide prospect. Mrazek's doing a great job for now, but anyways, he's not there. So I'm just going to go best player available here, and it's just going to be Alexander Holtz, who's still available. And just, my God, like another fast, young, speedy winger who can score on that team is just terrifying. I don't even know if I need to really say more. Like, that's just, you have Shepnikov on one with a rocket, and, oh, don't worry, he's off the ice. Now we have Holtz.
Yeah.
Put them both on the power play, one on each wing, which one time are you going to, like, it's just, that just makes their team scary. They're doing it right.
Well, that's just it, right? They've got an embarrassment of riches, and they don't have any glaring needs, right? So they're in the position that when the 13th pick comes, whoever the best player available is, they can just take him regardless of position, right? And, I'm looking at their roster. Outside of Justin Williams and Jordan Stahl, no forward is born before 1992 on their team.
Crazy.
Like,
they're all good.
Yeah, they're going to be, not only are they good right now, but they're going to be good for the next 5+ years if they can sort of keep everyone together. And obviously there'll be salary cap implications and that. But like, that's terrifying, right? So if you're able to add another offensive piece there too, because Dougie Hamilton was lighting the world on fire for them until he went down with injury. So you add him back to the mix, and Jakub Slavin is looking phenomenal back on defense for them as well too. And so
they got Brady Shea from the Rangers and then used him to kick them out of the playoffs. Like, just he sold them and just anyways.
So
they're
again, I'm not. I'm sort of the same logic of you. I'm taking offense here. So on my board here, I was going to take Dawson Mercer from Chicoutimi. There's some debate over whether he's going to be a center or a winger in the NHL, but when you're Carolina and you've sort of got this embarrassment of riches, just plug him in wherever you've got the hole, right?
Yeah.
And, he's got tons of energy and enthusiasm, and if you actually look up some of his highlights, like, he's one of those guys who looks like he's having fun out there, and he's, celebrating not only his accomplishments, but his teammates' accomplishments. He's almost got that OV sort of personality to him, which if you're going to go to a franchise, go to a young franchise that doesn't have veterans who look down on that, right? So win right there. And then with the storm surge and all of that they've got going on, it's almost embraced to have that sort of character. I could see him becoming a crowd favorite pretty quickly if they go on.
For sure. For sure.
All right, so I'm Edmonton, who missed out on getting the #1 overall pick for what, the 15th time in the last 16 years or
Just,
something like that.
just the worst luck, huh?
Oh boy. So I'm gonna go Dylan Holloway. He's an Alberta boy already, so he's gonna be already sort of that local fan favorite. They're sort of projecting him to be a bit of a power forward as well too, and you know he's gonna be able to handle himself out there, throw his body around. He's got a scoring touch as well too, which is always nice, which and also isn't something that comes built into that power forward package. So if you can get someone who can intimidate the opponents and score 20 plus a year, bonus, right? And, he's putting up numbers everywhere he's been, but the biggest thing is he's got elite skating ability, right? All the scouts are saying that he's one of the best skaters in this draft. And Edmonton's problem year after year after year has been no one can keep up with McDavid and Draisaitl, and no one can skate with them. You can't have, these big enforcers out there who are, 20 feet behind the play at all times. You need people who will ease the burden for Draisaitl and McDavid to become superheroes every single play and need to do things themselves and go coast to coast, right? So he's already got one season of NCAA at Wisconsin under his belt, which is a blue blood program, right? They do things right there. It's a high end program, so he's going to be coming from a good foundation. And with COVID, who knows? You've already got Big Ten canceling football and everything. Who knows what's going to happen with hockey? So if you draft him, you might actually see him earlier than you would a normal NCAA prospect who is going to be there for a couple of years, right?
Yeah, they might be able to get
he'll just opt out and say, oh, might as well go get some reps in up north, right? Yep. So I see that as a natural fit for him. Great skater, hometown guy, and you might actually see him earlier than some of the other NCAA prospects.
Yeah, no, I like it. Good pick.
Yeah. All right, that brings us to Pittsburgh, which we both sort of agree. We're assuming they're going to keep the pick. I don't see them picking, this high again next year. So who are you seeing them take unless they flip it in the next 7 days?
I'm thinking they go young and creative on offense. I mean, you still have the two centers there, right, with Crosby and Malkin, so why not get a little bit of fresh blood to play with them? So I'm actually leaning towards, I'm going to butcher this first name, Rodion Amirov. I think just having another just smart, smooth skating playmaker to go alongside with Malkin. If you're going to, you're talking Swedish connections. Everyone's scared about picking Russians from the KHL. I mean, that dude gets picked by Pittsburgh. I mean, first flight over. He's playing with Malkin, and I think it's just a nice, easy fit there. I mean, no, we hate to see Pittsburgh get more talented. I'd love to just butcher it and just say, oh, they'll take who's this guy ranked 76th here, but no, I think it's a good fit for Pittsburgh and for Amirov. I mean, he's
Yeah. So again, I was flip-flopping between a couple of people. I ultimately ended up picking Seth Jarvis from Portland Winterhawks. He had a monster second half to the season. Would have obviously, there's so many players, but with him especially, it would have been nice to have had playoffs this year to sort of see if he could have carried that over. But ultimately, global pandemic kind of happened, and so that got cut short. But even still, 42 goals and 98 points in 58 games, that's nothing to sneeze at, right?
That's in the
solid
West.
Numbers, and and it's a strong Portland team too, which I think people undervalue the systems that people come from, right? There's a reason why so many London Knights players that get drafted actually play in the NHL versus some of these, middle of nowhere teams where he looks great on paper, and then he never even cracks a roster in his entire career, right? So, Portland, they've pumped out a few NHL bona fide players over just even the last 3-4 seasons, right? You got Seth Jones, Cody Glass, Oliver Borton, talk about butchering names, Bjorkstrand, right? But so they've got that foundation. Obviously, their coaching staff knows how to sort of translate the skills that they're teaching to the next level. So that's where I go with them. But I also like your pick as well, too, right? So it's hard to say because there's also some rumors floating around as far as, is this Malkin's last season, and they might look to move on from him. And Rutherford's comments today, people are kind of reading between the lines as far as him referring to Malkin, especially with some players didn't look like they really cared this year and wanted to get back to their families and So who knows? But if he is still around, like you say, seamless fit for him and a fellow countryman coming over and reunite him there.
And that's the thing at this point of the draft is where it kind of spreads out. Like, I mean, you could see someone even as like John Jason Pertica or whatever, like from the German league making a leap here too. Like, there's so many guys down the list at this point. There's a reason why this is one of the deepest drafts in a long,